and I came across a notebook which I actually had with me at the time I landed in India, and I'd written it in real time, the experience that I had, so I thought it was probably best to recount directly from the story that I wrote. So let me just find the page. So prior to my arrival in India, I had not long broken up with a long-term partner, and I was devastated. I was living with a friend who offered to pay for me to do my yoga teacher training course, which was an amazing opportunity, and I really felt like life was beginning to change for me. When I lived with this friend, I was going through a lot of healing and a lot of emotional turmoil, and I would go and visit a tree every day and sit inside the trunk. It was a beautiful yew tree which is allegedly older than Christ. And I'd sit in this tree and I had a lot of magical experiences in it, and I found it very healing. So anyway, my yoga teacher training was booked and I was ready to go. Just to give you a little bit more context, prior to the breakup, my ex-partner and I would drink heavily, we'd binge drink, we had definite drinking issues, we had drug misuse issues, and I was feeling very low and very stuck. So now let's begin. This is how I wrote it at the time of arriving. So I left England on the 8th of August 2019 and arrived on the 9th. So I woke up this morning with the news from Abhay, who was my yoga master, that it was too unsafe to travel to Goa due to the weather conditions. It was completely flooded. There was always this risk, seeing as I'd booked to come in monsoon season. However, I did not let this worry me. Abhay suggested I take a bus from Mumbai to Pune. He gave me an address of a hostel to get to. By the time I'd landed at 11:55, I could not get hold of Abhay for more information. How was I going to get to this place? I remained calm and walked around the airport, took out some cash, and followed the signs for city bus. Tuk-tuks were piling up, collecting people. I gathered it must be to the bus stop. I find myself getting on the next available tuk-tuk. I cannot speak the language, I cannot speak Hindi, the driver cannot speak English, so there we were, driving around a dark Mumbai, unable to communicate. I did show him the address in my phone, but to no avail. He drove down a dark street, by which point my heart did start to race a little. I took a deep breath, and suddenly two girls turned up out of nowhere. They got into the tuk-tuk with me and insisted they would stay with me until they knew I was safe. They admitted it was their responsibility. We got dropped off at a bus stop and waited. By this time it was gone 1 a.m. and the girls thought it was unlikely a bus would come for Pune. But still we waited. My heart was filled with so much gratitude at this point, from fear to just feeling so grateful that these girls had acted so selflessly towards me. What was interesting is that they informed me that it was the first time in a really long time that they decided to go for a walk after work. They work very long hours in a hotel, and usually they go straight home to bed or for beers. I felt so lucky that they had come to my rescue. Half an hour or so passed and no sign of a bus. One of the girls spoke to a man with a car. He suggested we head for the domestic airport. We got into another tuk-tuk and were dropped off at not the airport but a roadside with a people carrier, which 5 other men were going to use. The girls asked them if they'd help me get to Pune. They too were all going there and agreed they would take care of me. I found myself in a car with strange men, about to embark on a long drive to another strange place. I said goodbye to the angels, that's what I named them, the girls that helped me, and we set off. We stopped after nearly 2 hours for a pit stop. One of the men took me to the toilet and asked if I needed food. I bought a sandwich and a juice. Then we set off again. What did strike me was their incredible respect for me. They really did look out for me and didn't speak to me or look at me unnecessarily or make me feel uncomfortable. We finally arrived to Pune to Sira Villas as instructed by my yoga master. The man at the reception had no knowledge of me. I said my name and who I was, and he just shook his head and had no idea who I was. I felt my heart start to race again a little. I took a deep breath and asked to connect to Wi-Fi. I tried to call my yoga master, but there was no answer. It was 4 a.m, so there's no wonder. Then suddenly a man arrived. He asked if my name was Elie. Once I said it was, he asked me to get into his car and he said he'd take me to Abhay, my yoga master. I had no idea where we were going. I was tired and felt like I was living in a surreal dream. The driver insisted I should sleep, so I lay down in the back of the car and quickly fell asleep. I woke up. 2 hours later, the driver offered to stop for tea. We pulled over in a nice roadside restaurant surrounded by Indian countryside. We headed off for another hour. We then arrived at a beautiful, peaceful, serene and energising place. The driver called Abhay to inform him of my arrival. We waited for a few minutes and then he emerged, a kind, gentle looking man, my yogi master. I did not ask too many questions, we just said hello and he drove me to a big beautiful building just up the road from his house. He invited me to go and freshen up in the ladies, which was music to my ears. I had a stripped down wash and felt refreshed enough to eat some breakfast. I waited in the lobby for him and that is when I saw it. A photo of Meher Baba. I recognised him instantly and I knew this was the man that had been coming to me in a vision. So 2 weeks prior to coming to India, I'd had a vision of the cosmos and a man appeared and winked at me. This was Baba. At the time, I knew this was significant but did not know who the man was. But the moment I saw his face when I arrived at NPR, I knew something greater was at work and something beyond the material and physical. It felt comforting. As time went on, I realised Meher Baba was a powerful fellow, to say the least. My mind did not have the capacity to comprehend his universal work. I was extremely open to it, yet a little niggling voice in my mind questioned, how could it be? Initially, the management at the ashram agreed to let me stay for 1 week. The place was magical. For all of those of you that have been, you'll know the energy that is in the place. So much love shared between pilgrims from all around the world. I'd listened to many of their stories about how they'd come to know Baba, each story unique and beautiful. One recurring theme was that Baba's love helped guide and strengthen people to deal with life's challenges. People seemed to be intrigued with my story. They thought it was wonderful. An atheist girl with no prior belief turns up without knowing a thing. Each night there is a get-together, arti, at 7 p.m. in honour of Baba, whereby prayers are made and songs are sung in a group at the Samadhi where his body lay. I experienced a feeling of such belonging. People were so kind, not just at arti but in general. Hugs and kisses were exchanged between strangers. There aren't enough words to express how beautiful this was to me. I was staying in a 4-bed female dorm and was sharing with a child psychologist from the US named Vanessa. We got on so well and I was glad to be staying with her. She'd been coming since she was young, as her dad was the first person to translate Baba's work into Iranian. However, she hadn't been in 10 years and required some healing. She was definitely in the right place. After a few nights, she introduced me to Sally. Lovely Sally over there, from London. Sally, who'd arrived years and years before, only a couple of years after Baba's body was laid. Did I get that right?
No. The first time I went was 1969.
Okay.
You went in 1969?
I was a bit late.
You were just a bit late, but still 69.
I
What a
had-
good year to arrive.
I know, right?
The VIP treatment.
All
There was
the
no one else
mandate,
there.
and all the mandate were in their body. You met them all. How long did you stay for in 69?
Not long, just a few days.
It's lasted till now.
Oh yes, and I have been back since then.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sally, I was very grateful to meet Sally because I knew that she lived so close to me here, so that was good. We've kept the relationship going. I've written that you're a great woman and I still agree with that sentiment. And we had agreed to meet up in London, which is what I just said, once I was home. It was coming towards the end of my week and Sally was told by Dara, Baba's nephew, that the weather in Goa had not improved, so I was not going to be going to Goa basically. So I stayed for the duration of my trip up until the 1st of September, by which point I was due to go back to England. My request was approved and I was happy. I had been doing my yoga teach training amongst all of this. At first I was in a blissful cloud, then I had a few days of sheer exhaustion. I was so overwhelmed by it all, yet not scared but strangely comforted. Suddenly it dawned on me, Baba had been with me for years, or so I had suspected. When my mum and I first moved to the south coast of England from London to escape my volatile, abusive father, I used to have a genie visit me. From memory, he was much like the genie from Aladdin, which I think Disney had not long released at the time. Whilst at Baba's pilgrimage retreat by the Samadhi, I wondered to myself, was that him that would visit me as the genie? That same night at the Samadhi, I got talking to a young girl from Mumbai. After a while, I looked down at her t-shirt. Lo and behold, there was a picture of the genie from Aladdin on it. This was all the confirmation I needed. Prior to my dream where Baba appeared, I had a really strange experience one night. As I was trying to sleep, I could hear a fire crackle and could see a flame appear from a candle. I genuinely thought I was going absolutely mad. I looked outside as I thought maybe the sound was coming from outside, but it was definitely coming from the room. I went back to bed where the flame reappeared. I turned over and tried hard to go to sleep. I was convinced I was just hallucinating. I was pretty sleep deprived at the time. Then suddenly, in the dark, a picture frame, which was empty, and a small bag of chakra stones flew across the room. I discovered them on the floor once I had finally mustered up the courage to turn on the light. I got up terrified and shouted, "I'm not ready for this." I went into my friend Corinne's room. I was staying with her since breaking up with my ex-boyfriend. I tried to wake her, but she was completely out of it, so I took a deep breath and marched back in the room again. I said, "Please, not tonight." Then it occurred to me, this could be my dad. I don't know why, but I felt like this was my dad. Maybe he'd passed, maybe, passed away. It had been 11 years since I saw him, and things were left very badly between us. I thought he was dead and trying to reach out to me. In the morning, I called many London Borough offices to see if he was registered dead, but there was nothing. Still, something in me wanted answers, so I asked Corinne to take me to the train station the next day, where I got the train from Buxted to Battersea. I remembered where he lived from when I was young. I walked up to his apartment block and waited for someone to let me in. A girl appeared and she was more than happy to help. She even offered to stay with me, but I told her I was okay. I knocked on his door, by which point I knew he was alive as I'd seen his motorbike downstairs. I intuitively knew it was his. His voice came through the door, "Who is it?" He could see me through the peephole, but before I could reply, he opened the door. He was clearly baffled. He didn't know who I was initially, then suddenly it clicked. "Elie, is that you?" To which I replied, "Yes, Dad, it's me." He was startled and asked offensively, "What on earth do you want?" I think he thought I was there to have a go at him, but rather I said, "Dad, I'm here to forgive you, and I hope you can forgive me too."
It's okay.
I saw the pain release from his face, and we held each other. It was the most powerful healing thing I'd ever experienced. This was a man who'd brought much pain into my life through abandonment and all kinds of bad situations that I don't need to get into. But alas, he was my dad, and I always thought about him with such empathy and a longing for a relationship that never seemed to work out. I ended up staying at Meher Baba's pilgrimage retreat for the duration of my 3 weeks, just as he had planned. I was awarded with a certificate for my yoga teacher training. I couldn't believe I had passed the exam and had given Abhay reason to believe I'd make a suitable teacher. I felt so blessed and humbled. Since then, Baba has been a huge part of my life. He is everywhere and I love him very much. Even despite the challenges I've faced since coming to him, I know that everything is for my highest good, and for that I'm eternally grateful. I have stopped binge drinking, heavy drug use and promiscuity. I'm healing and I have Baba by my side every step of the way, and I'm grateful to have things on track with my dad. Thank you, Baba.
And you only found that yesterday?
I found that about a week ago. Yeah, I'd forgotten I'd written it, but yeah, that
That's
came
so
handy.
perfectly detailed, everything.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, thank you for
Baba.
coming and telling us.
Thank you, Baba.
You know, we all,
Thank
I'm
you.
sure everybody in this room, especially you have been with him for a long time, have had experiences with Baba like that. But we don't often talk about them, we take them for granted. But when somebody tells a story like that, it reminds you of your own unimaginable experiences that we have with him. And Elie, I'm so grateful.